My one dream in life is to become a Bollywood actor. And in order to become an actor, I need to know how to act. See, I've done stuff like practice scenes for monologues and duologues and stuff, so basically practicing a character for one scene. But I've never actually done something like play a whole character over multiple seasons of their lives or multiple scenes. So I want to get better at doing that, and to do that, I'm going to challenge myself to see how I would play Alamzeb from Heeramandi throughout each season of her life. So a little bit of backstory. Heeramandi is basically a web series by Sanjay Leela Bhansali. So there's different stories of people who are all interconnected, and there's basically context of love, politics, power, and everything in between. And this story is set in the context of when India was still undivided and it was still ruled by the British. Alamzeb's the daughter of another main character in the story called Malika Jan, who's very toxic and controlling, and she's very like, if you don't do what I say, I will destroy your life types. So everyone else in this series has a lot of pain and heartbreak and sadness associated with their characters, but not Alam. Alam's like this breath of fresh air who's very innocent and pure, and she romanticizes every single moment of her life. But then by the end of this series, she's the complete opposite. She's become someone who she never thought she would become. She has a lot of heartbreak, a lot of sadness, and a lot of tense baggage associated with her past. First, I'm going to break down how I would play her character overall, and then we're going to deep dive into each season of her life. So as I said before, Alam's like this breath of fresh air who's very pure and romanticizes her life, and she has a lot of innocence to her. Well, see, I think a lot of this comes from her love for Shairi, because she loves Shairi so much, to the point where she lives, breathes, and eats Shairi. I think that also made her romanticize her life even more, to create a little bit of hope that, you know what, maybe her life can be different from everyone else, and maybe she doesn't have to go the typical route of like becoming a wife like everyone else, because she doesn't want to do that. She wants to become a Shire. She wants to escape this world and live a life which she is fulfilled in living. And she's not the type of person who would put on a mask or like be inauthentic either. Like, she's always just being fully herself. Sure, there's people where she's a bit more reserved in front of, like Malika Jan, because who wouldn't? But that also gives her character a lot more layering, and it makes her more human, you know? Because if you think about it, like, everyone acts differently according to what circumstances or people they're with, right? And relating to how she interacts with other people in her story, like her sisters like Bibbo and Lajjo, so her authenticity and who she is as a person would make her very different from all the other people in her life. See, her sisters can relate to each other more because they've been through similar stuff, but she hasn't. She's more of this free bird, and she sort of brings a different, more positive energy. Plus, she's like this super passionate person who's so against this destiny of her becoming a wife, which just makes her so much more layered. It gives her a purpose to fight and to keep on going. So I feel like that zest would kind of show in her eyes a lot. Her eyes and her face would have a lot of faith and hope in them. Plus, going off what Sanjay Leela Bhansali said in one of his interviews, where he's like, Alam has a lot of innocence, I would give her eyes and a resting face a lot of innocence and purity. I think giving a character a resting face is pretty important because it shows who they are as a person. Like, sure, the resting face is also dependent on the situation and like what context they're in. So if you're in a serious situation, your resting face would sort of be serious as well. But in general, the resting face kind of shows who you are in the in-between moments. Just based on what she goes through in the series, I think a good way to split up her character development would be in 3 sections. So the first one is the initial, before she meets Tajdar, which is basically her love interest. The second one is when she's with Tajdar. And the third event, which, spoiler warning, is when they begin the whole Azadi movement and Tajdar dies. So before she meets Tajdar, we all know that she's a Shire and she loves Shairi. I think I'm going to use this knowledge to my advantage. So if she loves Shairi, she also probably most likely understands the meaning behind it as well, and can be moved by how deep, meaningful, and sometimes romantic it can be. And I feel like that deeper understanding of emotions kind of makes her more empathetic towards others as well. Sure, I said she's innocent and pure as well, but she also empathizes and understands other people's emotions a lot as well. And I feel like Shairi also has a lot to do with that as well. And that kind of makes her more committed towards being there for the people that she loves the most. And in this season of her life, I want to make her voice super flowy, soft, innocent, and playful. I also think it would be really interesting to experiment with a rhythmic way of speaking for this character. So some people, especially singers like Shan, when you hear them talking, they have a subtle rhythm to their words.
Life के प्रति एक approach है जो मुझे लगता है कहीं ना कहीं मेरे बहुत काम आया है. There's a certain positivity that I have been able to hold on to through all these years.
Although I wouldn't make it too pronounced, like I'm speaking in a Shakespearean drama with so much rhythm. Also, why did I suddenly turn British? But instead, I would keep it subtle. And in terms of how she speaks, although she's very soft and calm and clear, that doesn't make her any less confident either. Like, she's still going to be confident in her verbal interactions, but her words will be more refined, more articulate and free, compared to like the other people in the story, which have a more flirtatious way of talking. And since she is from that Lahore area as well, I would still keep that kh sound as well in the Urdu dialect.
इसका मतलब हमारा खौफ तो बहुत है.
And although we know that she doesn't particularly like Kathak or singing or anything related to becoming a tawayaf, but Malika Jan's making her do it anyways, I reckon it would still influence her mannerisms and how she walks and her body language on a daily basis as well. And because usually in Kathak you have a lot of like straight posture and a lot of elegance and grace to how you move, she would have that in her day-to-day body language as well. So probably very straight posture, upright, direct, straightforward, with a little bit of elegance and grace and charm. But the way she walks isn't going to be the same as everyone else who has this very flirtatious and, you know, direct sort of movement. She's going to have a bit more freedom and flow, and she's going to be light on her feet. Because as we know, she has to look like someone who doesn't have the makings of a tawayaf. And for the character of Alamzeb in general, I reckon this area of her life actually builds the foundation for who she is as a person and how she would react in her situations in the next seasons of her life. And although she is very like innocent and fresh, she's still pretty assertive and will get what she wants. I guess she gets that stubbornness from Malika Jan. And that sort of influences her to make whatever she wants happen. So for example, when she's telling Malika Jan that, no man, I don't want to be a tawayaf, I want to be a shayad, she doesn't back down. She's pretty strong and can stand up for herself. And I think it's pretty interesting to experiment with the concept of having character songs. So when you kind of get a song and you base the tone or the vibe of the character on the tone and vibe of a song. I think the song Ek Baar Dekh Lijiye reveals a lot about her. Not only in this season of her life, but also the next one when she's actually with Tajdar. So this is the OG Ek Baar Dekh Lijiye.
Ek baar dekh lijiye, ek baar dekh lijiye, दीवाना बना दीजिए, एक बार देख लीजिए, जलने को है तैयार हम, परवाना बना दीजिए, एक बार देख लीजिए.
And this is my recreated version.
एक बार देख लीजिए, एक बार देख लीजिए, दीवाना बना दीजिए, एक बार देख लीजिए, जलने को है तैयार हम, परवाना बना दीजिए, एक बार देख लीजिए.
Although in this season of her life, she's more dreamy and more like romanticizing everything and also singing it with zest. It's a very peaceful, romantic and pretty deep song if you think about it. It's also kind of like how she's also very dreamy and romantic, but she also does have a lot of depth to her. I reckon Alam's character themes, which make her her, would probably be very caring, kind, selfless, passionate, and very zestful. Like no matter what era of her life she's in, she's probably going to be acting out of these contexts. And she would also have a lot of charisma, but just not your typical extroverted, life of the party types, a bit more quiet confidence, a bit introverted. Although being an introvert, she does have people she's extroverted with as well. Like the people in her life that she can be freely open with. This is probably her sisters and Tajdar and other people in a close circle. And although she is a bit of a rebel towards Malika Jan in terms of not being a tawayaf, she is still a bit timid in front of Malika Jan and would have a bit more shoulders raised and would be a bit more like mindful of what she says, because Malika Jan can sometimes be a ticking time bomb. Moving on to the next season of her life, when she's with Tajdar. So I feel like the character song for this season of her life would probably be Ek Baar Dekh Lijiye as well, except the context and the feelings behind it would be a little bit different because now she actually has a person to sing this song to. Like at this point, she's a dreamer in love. But then when she's with Tajdar, she becomes a little bit more mature and she kind of understands what love actually is and actually understands what the Shires were actually talking about. Now she's feeling all the feels that the Shires were talking about. Although she's been through pretty rough circumstances like running away from home, staying at Tajdar's house, to then again moving to some other place which Tajdar owns, I don't think these circumstances would define her at her core and make her really sad as part of who she is as a person. But I think at her core she would still be pretty chill, zestful and passionate about life like she was before. And I reckon it's also pretty special to her when she recites the Ek Baar Dekh Lijiye shairi, because before this, they've never really actually said to each other that they like each other. So it's kind of a pretty significant moment in her life. This is the original shairi.
एक बार देख लीजिए, दीवाना बना दीजिए, चलने को है तैयार हम, परवाना बना दीजिए.
And this is mine.
एक बार देख लीजिए, दीवाना बना दीजिए, जलने को है तैयार हम, परवाना बना दीजिए.
So their relationship has a lot of old school romance and charm to it, which I reckon in their day would probably just be called romance. But anyways, yeah, so she's a lot more like open and free with him, and like she genuinely feels safe to open up and she feels safe to live there as well. Yeah, like other than getting kicked out, but you know, we don't talk about that. And I feel like they're the type of people who bring each other up. Plus, being away from Heeramandi for the first time by herself, she's feeling this new sense of freedom which she's never really had before. And in a way that kind of makes her grow more mature as a person because she's learning how to live on her own as well. But that said, she's also enjoying the little moments in her life. It feels like life has never felt better before this. And as a result, I reckon her movements would be a bit more lighter and freer than before as well. Although the level of freeness and body language and everything related to that would obviously change depending on the situation, but in general, she would be a bit more free and light and easygoing. The movement would be a bit slow, but would be more direct and would have a lot of intention behind it. Her resting face in this era of her life would have a lot of love, happiness and satisfaction. Even her voice would have a bit more undertone of love and romance, especially when interacting with Tajdar. But alongside this love and romance, she would have a bit more maturity and bass in her voice as well. Her walk would be similar as before, but she would be a bit more lighter on her feet and also a bit more lighter on her shoulders as well, as if there's kind of a weight lifted off them. But in general, her walk and her movements would feel a bit more purposeful. She'd be feeling in love and romanticizing each moment even more than she would before. And her mindset would be to enjoy the present moment rather than being stuck on everything that's not going right in their life right now, which is basically her running away from home, as well as sort of being kicked out of Tajdar's house or moving away and living on their own. She's naturally introverted, but specifically with Tajdar and his grandma Kutsia, she's a bit more extroverted and freer and outgoing. But if you compare that to how she interacts with Tajdar's dad, who's also pretty intimidating to be around sometimes, she can be a bit more introverted and more careful of how she speaks and walks and interacts with him. And although now she is in a relationship and she is experiencing the feelings of being in love and what she thought love was like, but to an even more deeper level, it's so much more layered than that. There's so many more circumstances involved, and everything combined sort of makes her even more matured and makes her even more understanding of everything she's going through because of this. And in the third season of their life, as they're finally about to get married, oh my gosh. And you know what? It's a Bollywood love story. Like, of course they're gonna end up together, right? Everyone's so hyped and excited to see them finally be together. Even Malakai Jan's given the yes, you have to come by 10. And he was like, yes, I will come by 10. And then as you're watching the episode and his own father, Tajdar's own father, gets him arrested. And when he's arrested, he's just hung upside down and beaten to the point where he is bleeding from everywhere. But then finally, Faridan comes, which is basically Alam's cousin. She comes and you're like, ho gaya beta, she's gonna save the day, now everything's gonna be fine, because it's a Bollywood love story, right? He gets beaten so bad that he dies. Look, I am not the person to ever cry while watching a movie, like ever, not even Kalona Ho, when Aman's dying, but I think I might have shed a tear here. Okay, I get it, the whole story, like, it had to, like, domino affect the Azadi movement in their area or whatever, but come on. The third turning point in Alamzeb's life, when Tajdar dies. So I reckon when he already didn't show up to their wedding, she already felt a bit heavy and, like, heartbroken and almost in a way betrayed, because she did not expect him to not come, right? But then I feel like when she finds out he died, that's just like a whole character changing moment. She's never going to be the same after this. In a way, she's kind of already become like her sisters or like the people in her neighborhood. The total opposite of what she was in the start, which was very innocent and free and light. Now she's a bit more heavier and mature, and she has kind of been through the trenches, basically. Although now I feel like she also does have a bit more responsibility on her shoulders to continue the movement for Azadi that Tajdar believed in, and she would kind of continue that to connect with him and to carry on his legacy. And although she knew he was serious and he fought for Azadi, and he literally said that I am ready to die and I don't care, I don't think she ever actually expected him to die. So that must have been like such a huge shock to her. But although she is sad and has this grief to her when he died, I feel like as time passes, she would also be proud of him for what he did, because he stood up for what he believed in. And in a way, Alam's also like that as well. Although technically he didn't really die because of the whole Azadi movement. He died because his dad made him go into jail, and then, you know, like he got beaten up to death. And also technically because his dad is a jalad. But you get the point. Adding another layer onto this, I would also have a little bit of anger and hurt as part of her, because he literally chose his country over her, although she was supportive of him. But damn, that must have hurt, right? And I reckon the character song for this era of her life would be Chaudhry Shab, which is also performed by Alamzeb. It has the whole heartache mixed with the grief and like the longing she has for him. So I reckon this would probably fit really well. This is the actual song. And this is my version. has a lot of beauty and rhythm, but it's also clouded with a lot of deep and intense emotions. It's also like a part of her broke and she fully can't return back to the person she was before. Because if you think about it, her life completely changed after she met him. Like, she's been through so many new experiences, both good and bad, and she's even experienced so much growth as a person in her journey as well. But I reckon this, hands down, Tajdar dying has to be like the most personality altering thing in her story so far. And because of all this, I reckon she would be even more quieter than before, even more introverted and more in her head than before. Sure, she has that extroverted side that she shows to like a few people, but I reckon deep down she would just feel like not talking to anyone. Although she would feel like she has to put on that happy face and that strong face just so, you know, no one really worries about her. Even as time passes, this is something which is going to stay with her. Her body language would change a lot from the previously light and airy and like happy to being a bit more weighed down and more sadder and more serious and mature types, as if there was like a weight on her shoulders. I would make her voice slightly heavier and deeper, but not gangubai deep.
इज्जत से जीने का, किसी से डरने का नहीं, ना पुलिस से, ना एमएलए से, ना मंत्री से, ना भड़वों से, किसी के बाप से नहीं डरने का.
That would kind of show a bit of maturity that has come with the character. I think that would make her so much more different than what she was at the start. And her resting face would also be slightly more tensed. So her micro expressions would include like a tense jaw, maybe tensed eyebrows, a bit more serious expression, and even her walk would be a bit more direct and heavier. She wouldn't be as light on her feet anymore, that's for sure. And that's in a nutshell how I would play Alamzeb from Heeramandi in each season of her life. Please let me know what you thought of my performances and click here to find out what actually makes Madhuri Dixit magical.